Elira was the kind of girl who commanded attention effortlessly. With her sleek, styled hair, perfect makeup, and the latest fashion trends, she seemed to glide through the halls of Crestview High like a queen reigning over her domain. But it wasn't just her looks that made her the center of attention, it was the way she carried herself. Her confidence often spilled over into arrogance, a sharp edge in her words that could cut deeper than most realized. One brisk autumn morning, as students hurried to their classes, Elira strolled down the corridor with an air of superiority. Her piercing blue eyes scanned the sea of students, judging every face she passed with disdain. When she reached the janitor's closet, she found Mrs. Amos, the school's janitor, carefully mopping the floor. Mrs. Amos was a gentle woman in her 60s, always kind and soft-spoken. But what made her different was that she was blind. Not completely helpless, however, she had trained herself to navigate the school's corridors with an uncanny skill, aided by a cane and her sharp hearing. Elira sneered, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "How can someone like you even work here? You can't even see. What use are you?" The words hung in the air like a stinging slap. Some students glanced away, uncomfortable. Mrs. Amos said nothing, just smiled gently. But Elira wasn't done. "Maybe you should quit and leave the real work to people who can see properly," she added, her voice dripping with contempt. Mrs. Amos looked up, the faintest smile on her lips. "I may not see with my eyes, young lady, but I see more than you think with my heart." Elira rolled her eyes and walked away, leaving a trail of whispers behind her. Few knew the story behind Elira's striking eyes, and fewer still knew the deep pain hidden beneath her confident exterior. When Elira was just 6 years old, she had been in a terrible car accident. Her parents had feared the worst. Her body was battered, her face bruised, and her eyes, her most precious feature, were damaged beyond repair. The hospital had delivered grim news: Elira would never see again. But then, something miraculous happened. A young woman named Mrs. Amos, who had been blind since birth and was battling a degenerative eye disease, had recently passed away. Her family had donated her corneas to help others. Elira was chosen to receive those precious corneas. The transplant surgery was a success, and soon Elira's world, once plunged into darkness, burst open with color and light. Her parents had always told her she was given a second chance, a gift from someone who could no longer see. But as Elira grew older, the lesson behind the gift was forgotten. Instead, she began to see herself as superior, blessed, untouchable. She never met Mrs. Amos until now. The days following the hallway incident, a strange feeling gnawed at Elira's heart. She tried to brush it off as guilt or discomfort, but deep down, she felt something unfamiliar, a crack in her armor. One afternoon, Elira found herself volunteering to help clean the school library, a task assigned by the teacher as part of a punishment for her rudeness. As she gathered scattered books and dusted shelves, Mrs. Amos entered, her cane tapping softly on the floor. Elira froze, the memories from her childhood flashing in her mind. Mrs. Amos's voice was calm and kind. "You're not like the others, are you?" Elira looked up, startled. "What do you mean?" "You look at the world and see only what pleases your eyes," Mrs. Amos said gently, "but you don't see the soul beneath the surface." Elira's cheeks flushed. "Why are you being so nice to me after what I said?" Mrs. Amos smiled softly. "Because I see something in you. Something you don't see yourself yet." Elira's mind raced. Was this woman connected to her past in some way? The feeling that had been growing inside her intensified. Over the following weeks, Elira found herself drawn to Mrs. Amos. Despite her pride, she sought the woman's presence in the quiet corners of the school. Mrs. Amos never judged or lectured harshly. Instead, she shared stories about the world, about kindness, and about vision beyond the eyes. One day, as they sat in the sunlit library, Mrs. Amos took Elira's hand. "Do you know why your eyes are so special?" she asked softly. Elira shook her head, heart pounding. "Because they came from someone who lived without sight but saw the world more clearly than most. She gave you a gift, not just of vision, but of understanding. It's up to you to honor that gift." Tears welled up in Elira's eyes. For the first time, she saw herself not as someone better than others, but as someone responsible for carrying forward a legacy of compassion. In that moment, Elira's arrogance began to crack, replaced by humility. She realized that seeing wasn't just about the eyes, it was about the heart. The halls of Crestview High felt colder than usual that day. The chatter of students, the lockers slamming, the laughter, it all seemed distant to Elira, as if a fog had settled around her. The whispers she'd overheard after class replayed in her mind relentlessly. She's soft now, she's changing, spending time with that blind janitor. The words cut through her like a knife. Elira had always been the center of attention, the one people admired, feared, or envied. She was used to holding court with her sharp tongue and commanding presence. But now, those weapons felt useless, even dangerous. What if her peers thought she was weak? What if they saw the cracks in her carefully constructed armor? That evening, after the last bell, she found herself drawn to the janitor's closet, an unusual place for a girl like her. Mrs. Amos was there, quietly cleaning, humming a soft tune Elira couldn't quite place. Swallowing the lump in her throat, Elira blurted out, "Why do you even bother talking to me? After all the horrible things I said, you don't have to waste your time on someone like me." Mrs. Amos paused, setting down the mop. She looked at Elira with a steady, kind gaze that seemed to see far beyond the surface. Sometimes, the hardest hearts need the kindest eyes. And sometimes, the loudest voices are the ones that most need to be heard, not to be judged, but to be understood. Elira's chest tightened. She felt tears prickling the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them away fiercely. "I don't deserve your kindness," she whispered. "Kindness isn't something you deserve," Mrs. Amos said softly. "It's something you give. To yourself, and to others." Elira stood there, trembling, realizing for the first time that her pride wasn't protecting her, it was isolating her. The night of the Crestview Talent Show arrived with an electric buzz. The gymnasium was packed with students and teachers, everyone eager to see their peers perform. Elira had spent weeks preparing a speech, a confident, sharp-edged performance designed to remind everyone she was still the queen of the school. But backstage, the spotlight feeling heavy on her skin, Elira's heart pounded with a strange mixture of fear and hope. She thought about Mrs. Amos's story, the story of the cornea transplant, of a woman who gave her the gift of sight without ever expecting recognition. When her name was called, Elira took a deep breath and walked onto the stage, the bright lights nearly blinding her. But this time, instead of the cocky swagger everyone expected, she stood still and looked out at the sea of faces with quiet honesty. She began to tell the story of her childhood accident, the darkness that swallowed her world and the stranger whose eyes she carried inside her. She spoke of the years she spent blinded not just physically, but emotionally, by arrogance and judgment. "I judged someone without knowing her story," Elira said, her voice breaking. "I insulted a woman who gave me a gift I barely understood. Today, I want to say I'm sorry. To Mrs. Amos, and to all of you. Because true sight isn't about what you see with your eyes, it's about what you feel with your heart." The room fell silent. Then slowly, applause began to rise, soft at first, then swelling into a thunderous ovation. Elira's heart soared with a mixture of relief and humility. She had stripped away her mask and showed her true self, and it had been met with acceptance. The days after the talent show were different. The hallways of Crestview no longer felt like battlegrounds, but places of possibility. Students approached Mrs. Amos with curiosity and respect. Some even sought out Elira, eager to hear more about her journey. Elira and Mrs. Amos partnered on a project to make the school a more inclusive and welcoming place. They organized workshops where students learned to understand disabilities, listen without judgment, and recognize the hidden battles everyone faced. In one session, Mrs. Amos led the students through a simple exercise. Blindfolded, they navigated the school hallways guided only by a partner's voice. Laughter and nervous energy filled the room as students realized how much they took for granted. Elira spoke openly about her mistakes, about the pain of losing sight and the struggle to rebuild not just her vision, but her soul. Her words were raw and powerful, inspiring others to be kinder, to themselves and those around them. The old social lines blurred. Cliques dissolved as students connected through shared vulnerability and newfound empathy. Elira, once feared and isolated, found herself embraced not for her beauty or status, but for the courage it took to change and the kindness she now showed. Their friendship, once unlikely, had become a beacon of hope, proof that even the widest divides could be bridged by understanding and compassion. One cool evening, the sky painted in soft pastels of pink and orange, Elira and Mrs. Amos sat together on a weathered bench in the school courtyard. The world around them hummed with quiet life, the rustle of leaves, distant laughter, the chirp of crickets waking for the night. Elira's voice was gentle, almost awed. "I don't think I ever really saw you before, not the way you see the world or people." Mrs. Amos smiled, the warmth in her eyes palpable even though she couldn't see Elira's expression. "And I never needed eyes to see you. You had a light inside you all along. It was waiting to be uncovered." Elira felt a calm she had never known, as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "I thought vision was about eyes," she said slowly. "But it's more than that. It's about the courage to look deeper, to see beyond appearances, and to truly understand." Mrs. Amos nodded. "Yes. True vision comes from the heart. It's the bravery to be vulnerable, to accept help, and to show kindness, even when it's hard." The two women sat quietly, connected by a bond forged through hardship, growth, and the gift of seeing with new eyes. Elira knew her journey wasn't over. But for the first time, she understood what it meant to truly see, and to be truly seen. The weeks after the talent show brought an unexpected wave of change, not only for Elira and Mrs. Amos but for the entire school community. The seeds of compassion they had planted began to grow, slowly but surely transforming Crestview High. Students who once ignored the janitor's presence now greeted Mrs. Amos with genuine smiles and questions about her experiences. Some even volunteered to assist in her daily duties, learning to appreciate the dignity in every role, no matter how humble. Elira found herself invited into circles she had never dreamed of joining, not for superficial reasons, but because her peers saw her true character. It was a humbling and heartening shift. The arrogance that had once defined her was replaced by a quiet confidence rooted in empathy. One afternoon, as Elira walked through the courtyard, she saw a younger student, a shy boy named Daniel, struggling to carry a pile of books. Without hesitation, she stepped forward and helped him. He looked up, surprised. "Thanks," Daniel mumbled, cheeks flushing. Elira smiled gently. Everyone needs a little help sometimes. In that moment, Elira understood something profound. Kindness was contagious. Her own transformation had become a ripple that spread outward, touching lives in ways she hadn't imagined. The end of the school year approached, and with it came graduation, a ceremony that marked not just an ending, but a beginning. Elira stood at the front of the auditorium once more, this time as a speaker chosen to represent her class. The room was packed, the air thick with anticipation. She looked out over the sea of faces, friends, teachers, even Mrs. Amos sitting proudly in the front row. Her voice was steady, filled with a newfound wisdom. "We all have stories that shape us, some joyful, some painful," Elira began. "I learned that true vision is not about the eyes we see with, but the hearts we open. I used to think strength meant standing above others, but real strength is lifting each other up." She paused, letting the words settle. We live in a world full of challenges, but also full of gifts. Gifts like compassion, understanding, and forgiveness. These gifts don't just change us, they change the world around us. The crowd erupted in applause, many wiping tears from their eyes. Elira smiled, her heart full. After the ceremony, Mrs. Amos embraced her tightly. "You've come so far," she whispered. Elira nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "Because you showed me how to see." They stood together beneath the glowing sky, two women connected by a journey of pain, growth, and vision, a testament to the power of humility and the beauty of truly seeing beyond what's visible.